management program under Block 3. Today we are going to discuss the retail pricing strategy. Last time we talked about the merchandise as well as the location dynamics before that. This is another important part of the retail mix strategy, which is the price. Now, pricing among all the marketing mix elements is one of the most crucial uh, strategy because it deals with the profitability of the firm, or in this case we talk about the retailer. So everything depends or revolves around price, and it is one of the most flexible unit of the marketing strategy, which can be changed almost with a as per the given situation. So for the retailer, the retail price which they would work out, or the strategy that would work out for pricing their products to offer to the customers, plays a very significant role, because that will determine the kind of quantity of products and services that consumers will buy, and of course that will add on to the total revenue and the profit of the retail store. Now, if you have multiple stores, then how what is the kind of price points that you are maintaining at different store, depending upon your customers who are coming, and the kind of merchandise that you have will again impact the store profitability and the revenue figures. Now, we know that profit is one of the most crucial aspect to make a retail store sustainable in the marketplace, but it is dependent on the profit margins that the retailer gets after making the sales, and also they look into the cost that is involved in selling the merchandise. So we will look into all these aspects as we go along in today's session. So if you look into the pricing strategy, one cannot say in today's market scenario that the retailer would be totally wary of the consumer, because the consumer is ultimately the decision maker to come and purchase. So how do you entice? What kind of a price strategy is attractive for a customer to come and purchase from your counter is very very important. And depending upon the merchandise, whether you are playing in the low price segment, whether you are playing in the high price segment or in the moderate segment, all the effectivity of the pricing strategy would primarily depend upon to what level you are able to motivate your customers to ensure footfalls to go for conversions, which we look into the profitability of the firm. So when you talk about retailing price strategy, it is a method of determining the optimal price for the products and services that the retailer offers to the customer. It involves, as I told you, various factors like what could be the production cost, what could be the competitive pricing, what could be the customer's demand in a given market, and also the perceived value that the customers have when they are approaching any particular store. And that will determine the kind of retail prices that the retailer is following, which will ultimately impact the sales, which sales will obviously impact your not only the profitability but also the store's competitiveness in a given market. Now, if you look into the kind of they when you set up the prices, what kind of philosophy would contribute towards the image of the store would depend upon the pricing factor. If you're talking about a kind of a grocery store, let's say, or a departmental store, they're dealing in staple products which are of consumable items on a daily items. There, the pricing strategy would be very different. The philosophy would be very different from, let's say, an upmarket, or you're talking about a mall, or we are talking about a boutique sort of a thing, where you're talking in terms of, or a retail chain for that matter. The pricing strategy would philosophy would very much be different, and your pricing strategy will undermine why would people will come to you. For example, if you're going to a retail chain, you're going to CCD for a cup of coffee, you're willing to pay something like let's say $100 or so, but you will not be ready to pay even 25 rupees, or maybe 25 rupees is the standard price of a coffee today. You will not, if the moment you the street vendor, or in a railway station counter, you get a coffee vendor which is giving you more, charging more than 20 rupees, As a customer, we may feel very aggrieved. Now, why does this happen? It's the same thing. It's a coffee which is given, almost given different setup, the way it is offered. So the pricing over there, and also if you charge a very low price, let's say in a CCD, you charge it at 20 rupees. They start thinking that okay, they are giving something which is low of value. So the pricing strategy is fixed by the retailer depending upon the kind of customers who come, what kind of expectations they have, what kind of services that you are packing up, and obviously understanding the behavioral aspects of the customer. It's very, very critical to uh, deep dive into those kind of insights. So research is a constant process, even if you talk about making your most flexible part of your marketing mix, that is a pricing strategy workout, right? Now, generally, we will find that the manufacturer suggests a retail price, which is called MSRP, and this takes care of your production costs, marketing expenses, and the profit margin. So they set a certain reference point for the retailers. Now, this becomes very important in terms of pricing because retailers going forward would primarily depend upon that. Okay, what is MSRP? This is a suggested price. Can we tweak around that? You will find in the distribution cycle, most of the modern retail now, they are what the retailers are trying to do is they are trying to overcome, but the modern retail, if you see, they are trying to overcome all the intermediaries and trying to develop capacities which would, let's say, a wholesaler would have, or a dealer would have, a distributor would have, and then they are able to buy directly from the company, and they are able to leverage on those costs. So MSRP, which is there, they tweak around, they play around with it, and ultimately some of them they do pass on the benefits to the customers in form of EDLP and all those things, which we'll talk about it as we go along, right? What are the various influences, which of course factors do influence, environmental factors do influence the retail pricing strategy. So let's look at that. Porter has given various kind of frameworks with which you can study the various parameters. So based on that, you can look into, yeah, four basic parameters which can be looked into. If you can see here, the customers, obviously, they are the external influences which affect your price sensitivity. Needless to say, the price is the more the price elasticity, the more the price sensitivity is there. Customers would like to, or the retailers would like to stock those kind of products which the customers are ready to purchase. So here we talk in terms of the elasticity of price. Like if you know that if certain goods, if you find that demand is elastic, then playing with the price would be critical. But if it's an inelastic, then the retailer knows that the customers may not be sensitive to any kind of price variance. So in that case, they would be less sensitive to any kind of a change. So customers importantly have an important role in terms of the price sensitivity. And based on the price sensitivity, you can discuss various kind of objectives which can be looked into. There are certain challenges under that. For example, your price sensitivity on the economic orientation of the customers, right? So just hold on, just give me a second. So when you talk in terms of the price sensitivity, the kind of challenge, the objectives that are there in terms of price sensitivity, it could be economic oriented, it could be convenience. People would like to, in terms of economic orientation, obviously they would look for those retail outlets where the lowest price or the utilities are taken care of. Convenience, they would like to say they may be a little bit ready to pay a price. For example, you might find vegetable vendors opening up in the street corner. One may like to pay a little bit more, or people who come to the doorstep, you may buy vegetable at certain price more than the MSRP. That's okay. But the point is, the customer should be willing to do. So it depends on the sensitivity of the customers. And also, sometimes the image part, I told you, the price sensitivity is often affected by the image of the retail store. So if you're having a very shabbily looking kind of a retail store, everything is unkept, things are not properly laid out, your people are not very very conversant with the way they come across. Even if you go for a high end product, you may not be able to connect with the customers. So the expectation is quite different. So the image parameters can also affect the price sensitivity. Sometimes the variety, some people look for variety. For example, in apparels, the especially the mid-segment price conscious people, they always look for varieties. So when you are looking to, if you do not have a merchandise which does not have that kind of a variety, again that might affect your variety at variable prices. That also something which you need to know. So they will be only be there if you have a good variety. Saris, emporiums, boutiques, and all those things. They look into these kind. They look into also exclusive. Yeah, there may not be too much of a high price sensitivity in terms of the favorable, the positive side, but yes, they will definitely be looking into. Their concern is more for variety. For price may not be an important factor, or in some cases, depending upon the product category, they will look for the value for money. It depends on the kind of retail store which they are talking about in terms of the variety of products that they do. Other one could be the your loyalty factor. If you're loyal to some, you may be ready to go. Okay, I'm going there. I'm patronizing the store. This is that which happens with jewelries and all that. So if you've seen the yesteryears, in your family, if people are buying from a particular jeweler, the tendency of the family is to buy from those kind of retail outlets, because they know that these people are loyal. They will not cheat you. They will not. You may go to other stores, but you may not have that kind of a conviction or the trust one. So here, though price is an important parameter, they are ready to even compromise for that because they know they are assured of the retailer's conviction and the trustworthiness. So sometimes that do play a role in the deciding. Many of these also, the key effects of examining price elasticity depends on how difficult are you in terms of your pricing strategy, in terms of comparison. If we talk about private label brands which are available in the store, it may be very difficult to compare. If you are a dominating brand, if you are the leader, the prices, even if you change the price, the others will have to change the price. So how sensitive are you to that, right? So that kind of a thing. So benefits from, and what kind of benefits do you accrue from a particular brand, that will also affect your sensitivity. Another thing which you have seen is very interesting thing, that though I have a price sensitivity generally, but there are times when I overlook this. Must have observed that, okay, whenever you are, suppose somebody falls sick, right? Or I have another good example during COVID. People did not think twice. They just went on buying sanitizers left, right, and centers. Your masks, all of a sudden started becoming overnight. People started selling, and people started hoarding that. Some of the retailers started hoarding that and selling at a higher price. So at that point of situation effect does play. Even at a higher price, they would be insensitive to the price differences, and people might follow for that. Looking into suppliers. Suppliers is who are you interacting as a retailer? You are interacting with the wholesalers, retailers, or you're dealing with the manufacturers directly in modern trade. So, what kind of control mechanisms are there? What kind of margins are being passed on does impact your retail pricing. Competitors, I think, need not be expanding that. I think it is very well understand. They play the market dynamics. Sometimes, if you are in a monopoly market, obviously, if you are you will dictate the terms. If you are a market leader, you will dictate the term. But in other cases, you may have to follow in line. So whether it's an oligopoly structure or a monopolistic competition, or perfect competition is an ideal situation which you will not get so easily. But yes, there are times when if you get perfect competition, that's well. So the entry barriers are less. So competitors looking to competitors strategy, you play with the pricing in order to create more barriers to entry for others to come in. So you tweak your pricing strategy so that the competitors can be kept at bay. Other things are like the government, of course, which is a very, very important part, where you must have seen government plays an important role in terms of the idea is to the government wants to see that there is no monopoly. So and you are charged. I mean, you have got getting a fair amount of the competition, and every customer does get a choice to buy. So when you talk about that, there should not be very less discrimination when you're talking in terms of the products which are being offered. So certain government policies are put into place. For example, In certain standard products, you must have seen this, the minimum price that you can see. You cannot go beyond that because they're very sensitive cases. So, of course, the upper cap, there is an upper cap to everything. So government tries to follow a certain amount of fixation in terms of the pricing. And another thing is when you're looking into the pricing strategy, you're looking into the trade margins. What levels you have to get into agreements when you're signing agreements with your as a retailer or a company. You have to find out at what kind of a leverage you can have in terms of the minimum support minimum price and what kind of a profit margin can you play around with. So those are again pricing laws which govern the in the market. Sometimes retailers often get together in terms of horizontal agreements. This happens in a oligopolistic situation. I'll give you a fair example of this. You must have seen in order to create more barriers, what is happening in Goa right now in the tourism sector, most of the it is very difficult to get Ola Uber services in Goa. So what have these tourist operators they have done? They have agreed upon a certain price points which is mandatory for everybody to follow. And sometimes it is a kind of a you have to deal with it. And any Uber or anybody wants to break that, among them that is a they try to settle scores, which is very unruly, which is very detrimental to the customers because it creates dissatisfaction, it creates more discomfort. It is also not legal. But then there is a tacit understanding. You must have seen that whenever you try to go in a given city, that okay, there's a metered kind of for cab services. If you're going at night time, they say, okay, fine, can I charge you double for that? For at night, you will be charging double because you don't get a return. It has happened in the past. These are unscrupulous things which are being, this is illegal. But that's a reality which we cannot see. Another thing is the predatory pricing, where you actually go and say that you give it a rock bottom price, killing the competition completely, so that you are more price-wise more attractive to the customer. Now, going forward, what could be the objectives of a retail pricing strategy? Obviously, you look into maximizing profit, market penetration, looking into competition, and of course, the image of the store. Mm, what kind of approaches can a retailer take based on your business model and market conditions that you are in? You can adopt any of these three which we are talking about. That is a cost-based approach that which basically looks into what is the cost that you incur for production, for transportation, and then all those taxes that you pay. End of the day, what kind of profit margins you can have a markup thing, and you add on that markup, and then you can sell it in the marketplace. So basically, a very simple method of looking into the cost parameters to look into the market conditions, right? Now, getting into the demand-based approach. Demand-based approach is again, as you can see, that depending upon the customer demand. As I told you, depending, it may so happen that you are putting up stores in a particular place, the customer is also there, but they are not coming to you. So, what kind of to get into market communications to entice people? So, and you get into those markets only and cater to those products only which the customer is demanding. Other one is the most competitor base, which is a very common thing that what my competitor does in a given a product category, right? Or different merchandise that they deal with. That there is a benchmark kind of a thing. So if I have to get into that space, I also have to be at par with the competition. Otherwise, I will not be able to draw the attention of the customer because they might feel that okay, these people are something different. They may charge something high, so it can play with the perceptions of the people and can create impact on the pricing strategies. Now, retail pricing strategy, if you talk about the objective, when you talk in terms of consideration that you give in price, framing the pricing objective, primarily it takes into account the retail business model, which I just talked about. You look into the financial parameters, you look into the marketing parameters, and the production, the technology, all these parameters are taken into account and seeing that okay, whether we can achieve a certain amount of profitability. End of the day, you are not here to do charity, you have to earn that money, right? So you have to be looking into those objectives of your businesses. So your mission statements, your strategic intent that we call is an important indicator in terms of deciding what your objective considerations are. Now, going into that, we look into the next stage is the characteristics of product and brand that you are associated with. When you deal with different products, maybe unbranded products can relate to that. Okay, you cannot have a pricing which can be the dictating power. If you're having no branded products, perhaps you can play it out with that. Look into, like, for example, Javed's hair salon lounge. You go for a normal haircut, you may get at a very reduced price. But the point Javed is willing to pay something like the something like 1 grand for a haircut or what, right? Now, why is that? Whether they get more services, now the service provider has to understand, the retailer has to understand that for that kind of a price, what should I provide? Like in a CCD, they say a lot can happen. The market jargon, the positioning statement says a lot can happen over a cup of coffee, right? Then they said that, okay, why a cup of coffee? It can be anything. So Starbucks said that you talk about the whole experience. So when you're talking about the kind of image that you are creating, you are also increasing the kind of product categories and kind of services that you could be providing. And does that impact your pricing? Yes, it does, because it justifies what kind of pricing that you are offering, charging to the customer, and the customer has to acknowledge that as a benefit. Because at the end of the day, if the customer does not accept what you are offering as something which is valuable to them, when you say values, it is benefits by cost. That means it should increase the benefits and decrease the cost. So if that is achieved, perhaps if that has been captured in your brand, in your product, when you are communicating about these products and brands, that definitely should be captured as one of the pricing objectives. And a third point, when we talk in terms of customer price elasticity, just now I talked about the price elasticity objectives that are there while setting it. So obviously, whether you're going for image parameter, whether it's a situation parameter, whether it is a kind of you're comparing that, or you are feeling that okay, this is a merchandise, it's got more variety. All these price elasticity points, whether it should be elastic or inelastic, affects the price sensitivity and decides what kind of price points you should be making it available. So retailers have to understand what is the price sensitivity by understanding various goods and services which are elastic, which are inelastic in terms of their demand. Based on that, you work out your pricing strategy. Then comes your resources available. Obviously, anything that you are operating, depending upon whether you are a slow, small level player in the marketplace, or a moderate, or a supermarket, or a hypermarket player, where big corporates are available, then this based on the pricing strategies can be looked into. But everywhere understand the kind of returns that the retailer is looking into would be dependent upon. Yes, you can make resources, but those investments will only come when they are guaranteed that okay, there is a certain amount of return on that investment. Otherwise, it will be difficult going ahead, right? What are specific objectives? I have told you that one of the big important parameters, which in terms of pricing, when you look into all these four considerations, what could be the objectives of a retail price strategy? One could be the obviously profit objective. That needless to, I need not expand on that. Every retailer is in the market to earn that particular profit. So they would obviously stock those products which are in demand, which is demanded by the customer, or which helps them to at least achieve their revenues, the stated revenues. Market share objective is basically to how to garner market share in a given marketplace. That depends upon how you are not only providing products, but providing products better than your competitors, and also looking into the value. So every day there is a challenge in terms of how much more you are being, what kind of varieties are you, what kind of merchandise you are having. So just giving products at a particular price point is okay, but you must understand the range within which you should be offering the product, for which the customers will be willing to convert, and as a result of which you can get your market shares. Competitors, where you have to ensure that by your strategies, your pricing strategy, you are able to create more barriers for the others to come in. That means through your discount offers or whatever the strategy that you may adopt. You create a kind of a, I will not say fear, but yes, they definitely create a kind of a apprehension in the minds of your competitor. So, so that you will not get it and the market could be yours. But yes, you should also talk about strategies where you can uh, make surprise your competitor with your better services. So you keep on adding something more and more innovation that really works, which is very very cost effective. You can perhaps make it happen. Buyer oriented objectives. This is, yes, in theory we talk in terms of buyers. If you ask how much money you want to pay, they will say nothing. So I said that, but yes, but customers are willing to pay some amount of money for that particular thing, and based on that, when you work out, this is mostly done by the cooperative sector. If you see the government sector, again, when we talk about the government sector, also they follow something like a buyer oriented, but difficult to, we try to look into the customer's willingness to pay kind of a parameter, but that has to be researched well, right? You have to understand what the customer is looking for and give that, and at what price. So if you're covering, maybe initially, if you are entering the market for the first time, you have to play with the price. Maybe you have to price it low. May have to go for a skimming. You must have keep the skimming price or low penetration pricing, depending upon the pricing strategy. But after that, you may have to switch gears. Otherwise, it becomes problem. And if you are perceived to be a very low price player, also it also sometimes will, the buyers will also be like, oh, okay, they are giving at low price. And tomorrow, if you want to jack up the price, they will not be sensitive. They may switch to other competitors. Uh, Government oriented pricing, as I told you, in certain cooperatives, they do look into the buyer orientation a little bit. It's a variant of that, where cooperative sectors have come up and they look into the price sensitivity, and where they try to give a fair price kind of a thing. And basically, for those products which are sensitive to the economy, for example, petrol prices, they have good control over that. If you are into vegetables, you are like onion prices, potato prices, sometimes you find there is a scarcity, it just scales up. So government imposes certain amount of restrictions. So you should be aware of that. If you remember, we talked about the government parameter while setting up the pricing policies. Product oriented objective, obviously, this is if you have a very robust product, like what if you look into the Apple does, right? That company, in terms of what they do with respect to iPhones, I think they've been able to weave or get that mileage of having product, what do you call, supremacy in terms of what they are offering. Now, but then this, for this to happen, the company needs to, or the retailer has to align with those. Either the company opens up their retail single branded outlets or their exclusive stores, or they would go for, because there's a very high level of quality consciousness required in this, and also not only that, these products should also have a buy-in from the consumer. So a lot of things has to go in terms of the relevancy of that product in terms of market acceptance. Until unless that is there, just because putting up a product-oriented idea may lead to very short-sightedness, which we talk about marketing myopia. So that is also something which needs to be done. The retailers have to be aware of that. If I become too much product consciousness in terms of my product, they may lose out. So obviously, product-oriented objective is there for retail for pricing, but what kind of products? It's a technical product, something which others do not have. I have a say tendency or chances that you may price it higher. Let's look into some retail pricing approaches. Mostly, you'll find these are the which you see on the screen are the discount orientation. This is an, I need not talk about more about it. There's a low price where you're trying to give some incentives to the customer, but then point is at all times. Because if you see today the retailer, you talk about the any of the retailers, whether it's on the online retail or the offline retail, all throughout the year, in every month or the other, you find some event or the other happening, and in some format, the discount orientation has been taken into account to the place in the market. This is done primarily because we our customers look for these kind of incentives. So yes, to increase their sales figures, they do it. But whether that should be oriented, whether your retail pricing should be discounted always, then in that case, always while pricing, you have to take this into account that when I'm going for it, I have to keep a buffer, because obviously there is a discount factor which is likely to be expected from the customer side, and I have to take care of that. So that's a discount orientation. At the mark price is almost same as the similar pricing what the current going rate pricing orientation is. This is again maybe here the pricing could be slightly higher than the what you see in other grocery items, like in case of discount orientation. But definitely we look into one thing is we look into better services, because here is like you compete. It's a very competitive market. So what does my competition do? Though I go ahead with what the market says, at the same time, I'm also giving better services. I'm giving a differential treatment to the customers so that their perception regarding me is that I give value. I give you more value for the price that they are paying. So what one can give, that depends upon the retailer, in terms of, like you must have seen the Lulu retail midnight sales. They went for a discount, but the point is, does that disrupt the market? Yes, it disrupts. Can they continue? Cannot continue. But is that the going rate? Is what the market is going rate? May not be. So even they, though at times may go for discount orientation, they may fall back to a kind of a, so possibilities are there. There are companies who retailers who can shift from going rate from discount. So it is possible. But then these are done to basically make money during a particular time, make ensuring that your profitability is not affected, your revenues are not affected, right? Going into the upscale orientation, as the name suggests, that you have to always be a top of the line producer kind of an orientation. This depends upon the kind of image that you have created for your brand or for the retailer. If you're going to a very branded outlet, retail or store, obviously the idea is that people have those expectations that you will not get any other products which are of shoddy nature. So the kind of image that you portray should be commensurate with the kind of products that you have, so that you're able to meet the specific or the speciality aspects that the customer has, and in terms and they would not be very price sensitive also. So that is the orientation which you can, and now that depends upon how you want to stay in the marketplace. Now, given this, I would like to take you through the various kind of pricing strategies that the retailers follow while taking into various other parameters, a combination of various parameters, because in the manufacturing field you'll find many all these parameters play a role in terms of whatever orientation you may have. May not be for discount orientation, but for at the market or above the market. So if you're talking about the price below market, would be for the discounted one. If you're looking for price at market price, that is a going rate price. Above could be for the kind of upscale market orientation that you have. And if you see the marketing mix variables, retail mix variable, which you are talking about, which is that you have to consider something like the location, service, attributes, assortment of your products, which means range of products or merchandise, or you're talking about the environment that you have created within the stores and the nature of the products, whether it is a very unbranded product or a very exclusive product or whatever it is, a shopping product. So depending upon those brands, what is the kind of impact you can see here? Location wise, what is the impact? What is the service attribute? It's very, in some cases, very. If you look into that, for example, location. For a discount, you do not expect parking, those kind of services. In case of going rate prices, you would expect those retail outlets to come up in commercial districts or the areas which are proximity to the competition, where you can get into comparison, right? Whereas in case of other line, you may look into creating exclusivity. So you will be more compatible with a place where these kind of people are the people whom you are targeting are coming. So they would like to try to achieve something called monopoly, but it's not easy to achieve that. But yes, you can achieve some kind of a exclusivity in terms of that. So location wise, they kind of parameter decisions that a retailer has to take has to be very different. Similarly, for others also, you can share, you can go through it. I'm not going through all that because that will be the paucity of time. Service attributes, obviously, less in case of discount, moderate in case of your at the rate market, but more personalized services in case of your upscale orientation. Assortment, you may have very limited variety because these people come here for discounted stores, they're very particular. Whereas if you're moderate, you need moderate. But in case of upscale, they would look for variety because they're ready to go for it, search and find out. So they would go for extensive assortment. Store environment, you may create a very minimal kind of a store environment, maybe very rustic also. That's okay for a discount orientation. At the rate market, little bit of importance has to be given in terms of the store layout, the kind of movement that you give, proper planograms. But as you move into the high upscale orientation, obviously, planograms are an important. Merchandise assortment is a problem, is an issue, and how you are managing the traffic flow within that, creating a feel good factor. Because if you remember, such today modern retailing is more towards the other price at market price or price above the market price strategy. They are ready to splurge money in terms of giving a experience to the people. So that's something which you can look into in terms of store environment. Nature of products, discount you can get, non-branded people will not bother about it. But in case of the other two, they would like to get branded stuff, quality products. So these, and because that's what is the expectation and that affects your market price. What could be the other pricing strategies which retailers follow? EDLP is a very common strategy which is adopted by most of the big retailers in the marketplace. So, what is the idea is that you give it at a less than your retail, the kind of price that you get for the minimum, the MRP as we call it. Now, why do retailers are able to do that? Primarily because they are able to play between the price at which they are getting and the price which they are offering to the market, giving them the that gap which is there. The discount which they are giving is quite high and quite perceptible. And by doing that, you are able to hold on to it. And it is mostly followed in case of most of the retailers across different product categories very effectively in case of grocery items and all that. You find that less than the market price, market retail price, you are getting a product. So people get enticed by that and they can enter it. But then this kind of things are become very common. High-low pricing, where the retailers tweak with the pricing in terms of, again, it's a kind of a variant of retail fee, but they do it according to the market requirements. Leader pricing is mostly followed for those kind of products which are your, where you reduce the price for the most major product categories. So as a result, it will be a kind of a leader, attracting all people to come and buy. Skimming price, as you all know, it's a very common pricing strategy which can be followed by retailer. That you fix a price for a particular target audience, and then once that target audience has been, you have managed to, then you bring down the price and cater to others. This has happened in case of in stores by all. You must have seen that whenever there is a new brand, new what do you call it, level of this iPhone series that comes. Yes, there is a skimming strategy. Initially, they price it very high, but over a period of time, they bring it down when the other variant comes, other better variant comes into the marketplace, so that the ones are not getting cannibalized. But sometimes the Apple also has a store, has an area, make it available to the other retail. Nowadays, Apple being able to bring down the prices by moving their cost to their place of manufacturing across to various other countries where the cost of labor would be very low, so they can pass on these discounts. So over a period of time, you are able to bring it down and attend to more number of customers than what you initially thought of. But price giving is like taking the cream one by one, layer by layer. It's a layered pricing, you can say, but over a period of time, and you're able to get your market shares. Penetration pricing, as the name suggests, it's a low pricing strategy which is with respect to your product. Now, this cannot be applied to every kind of product depending upon what kind of cost that you are incurring for production. You cannot give a electronic goods which you've just thought about at a low price. It may not be feasible. So what you do is you may have a penetration pricing strategy for your products which are already existing, but you penetrate the market. Sometimes companies do give uh, prices at a very low price and disrupt the market. We have seen the case of Reliance Geo, where your data was given to most of the customers free of cost, right? Why? Why did they do that? Yes, it was done to disrupt the market so that others, the competition actually bled because of this. Was the company incurring losses? Yes, they were incurring losses. But was that a good strategy to follow? Maybe at that point of time when the market was very, very saturated, almost the market was gone into maturity, these people entered. So something like this disruption word was necessary, maybe. Very, very surprising for any retailer in the market space. But then, yes, it has happened. It caught the competition by surprise, and the customer base really moved in favor of Reliance Jio. But yes, today, if you see, the prices are being charged. They are no longer giving it for free. So obviously that happens. So penetration pricing, sometimes you give it at a very, very low price to capture the market. But yes, it has its own problems also, because your profit margins would also be low. Price lining, where you line up your product according to particular price variant, you don't make it rigid so that you do not play with that. People will either buy with that space or will not buy. Bundling prices is a very common experience which retailers do, where they try to combine few three products and try to minimize the net pricing which is offered to the customer. As a result, what happens? The price sensitivity drops and people see more value in it, and they go for the offers which are given to them. Psychological pricing, if you see, as the name suggests, it it does not look into the what kind of cost that you incur in terms of the cost of manufacturing it or anything. You look at primarily from a psychological aspect of the customer's perception in terms of the products which are being offered. There are various types of psychological pricing. Like, for example, there is a prestige. Like, for example, when you eat out or you buy from a particular store, you feel that you feel belonging to a particular class of people. So those kind of, like if you're going to a golf club, let's say, it makes you feel very elated by the fact that there is a certain amount of prestige which is linked. So that's something which is psychological. It could be, and they're not price sensitive at all. In these kind of people who fall for these kind of pricing, they know that they will go for the prestige or the self esteem that you're talking about, right? Reference pricing is when you talk in terms of, okay, if I buy this product, that's what it will give me. That's a good brand. So if you're getting into that, it mostly happens in sports category. Yannick's, badminton bats. So you talk about SG bats. You must have seen that. So they set certain benchmarks as a frame of reference, and then they look into the kind of pricing. It's again a psychological pricing. Traditional pricing is again an exact type of psychological pricing, where you look into a long-term pricing where things do not change. It is almost the same. It plays with the psychology that is we are in the market. We follow very traditional handicrafts and all that. They come into that, but today things are changing. Earlier, you always say that people are, why should I pay so much for a? But today, the kind of work that has gone into it, tribal crafts, handicrafts, they have now started, or herbal products, they have started getting a different kind of a traction from the customers, because they have understood of these the traditional parameters which is there, that okay, such products would be more good, and hence even if it is coming at a higher price, I'm ready to buy. So again, they become more referential point from the historical legacy that these products would have. So as a result, it has a better buying from the customer. So it's very psychological pricing. Even not pricing, we must have seen, which we also call as the Bata pricing in India, where you're talking in terms of 99.99, those get very extensively used by all the retailers, I think, in terms of their, so that we say we get this kind of products at so much of prices. So they play with the psychology of the people in terms of the even out combination. And that what makes this kind of pricing more successful. Apart from this, there are various other kind of promotional pricing strategies which help to drive consumers. For example, your preemptive. These are again low price strategies where you try to you know stop the competitors to come in. You get into predatory pricing. You give it at a price which others cannot come in. So, or you play with the value perception of the people. Where you look into demand, let's say, the demand part of it, and you look into promoting those products which help you to create more demand for that. You understand what is the value that people are ready to give in, and you try to you can offer it to the consumers. Sometimes you will find that there is certain clearance sale or something like that which is given to create more a kind of the people are ready getting ready to buy, or these things are getting stocked out. So why don't you buy? Those kind of promotional tricks are also given. Most clearance sales do talk about it. Hurry up, this is getting over. Before this is your last chance. A lot of these online retailers do that these days. If you see the notification which comes on your digital social media, they talk about, okay, this many hours sales. This is the drop in prices, 70% off, 80% off, 60% off, only for 2 hours or 3 hours. Create some kind of a, which we call as the rain checks, to which are issued to consumers who come in for that special sale, or which we call as a midnight sale. I was talking about the Lulu retail. They do that. These are basically promotional pricing strategies, which again can create overwhelming responses from the customers. So sometimes that's why it is more acceptable by the various retail outlets. Um, there are other fine-tuning processes. Coupons has been a very important way in which retailers use to fine-tune the base price. Special offers like just now I told you about such kind of offers. Um, Geographic pricing, you'll say find that in certain prices the prices are high or low. Differential prices is there primarily because to take care of certain things, right? For example, if you buy momos in Bhutan and in Darjeeling, they may pricing it very low. But if you're talking about in place like Kolkata or any of the metros, they may fine tune that price according to the wow momo is a very classic example where they try to make momos more quality driven as well as but then point is people, there are discount players who came into the market who disrupt the market data. They started going beyond the what wow momos also gave. The only thing is that Wamamo gave it to in a very, very organized retail parameters. They have the retail chains. But then the concept has really caught on. They really got into very sharp increase in terms of the geographical. So because they are able to absorb that to give better services to their customers. Um, and not only that, they've been able to hold on to the customers. Yes, how far they're going to sustain that, that depends on the fine-tuning process. Now, this is something which can over a period of, it's a question of adapting to the market scenarios, the changing consumer sentiments, and able to get their attention so that they can, sometimes you have to move beyond your particular consumer segments, right? Very, very commonly used techniques. I have already talked, sorry, I'm going back. Okay, so what does the retail setting retail prices would entail? Yes, definitely it would entail determining the base price, You have to also look into what kind of a value perception is there in terms of what the customers would require, and then in terms of what kind of cost and other competitor rates that could impact the ultimate price setting in the marketplace. Few things that you would like to go is when you talk in terms of retail price setting, you should talk about something like the markup prices. Markup prices is where, okay, what is the cost you are coming, what kind of a profit margin do you see? So based on that, what kind of markup will you offer it in the marketplace? And you will also look into what is the cost of goods, your COGS, which is there. If you're talking about your markup price percentage would be dependent upon what is your price at which you are giving, right? And what kind of a costs that you have incurred, right? From the point of view we purchased it to the point of sale, what is the cost that you've incurred? Based on that, the percentage markup would be important metric, financial metric for the retailer to decide the retail prices. Right. So, what kind of markup should I have? 5%? Should I have a 10%? Or what goes in the marketplace? Which is a very sensible kind of markup that I can work out. Would be important in terms of. Also, you look into what kind of margin. Margins are also like markups, but the point is they work out on the sales price. So when you talk in terms of what kind of margins we need to offer to we are getting, or that also helps you to understand what margins we can make in a given product. That will be the base price plus the margin that I'm getting. I'll be able to play around with that because the retailer always has the power to play with this fine tuning parameters, like I told you, couponing or discounting, to change according to market condition and adapt. But then that is something which cannot be sustained for a longer period of time, right? And but also you need to know that I cannot have this kind of a strategy for all kind of product categories. I have to be very meticulous in terms of understanding what my gross margins are going to be. If my gross margins are not coming, it is going to seriously affect my profitability. When I talk about gross margins, I have to take into my complete cost of when I'm not only procuring the thing, what are the other additional costs that I'm taking into? When you talk about cost of goods sold, you take into account. You do not take into account everything. You do not talk about the because you assume in cost of goods sold, you assume that the inventory cost remain the same, the production cost remain the same, the transportation cost remain the same, which is not true. So when you're talking about in terms of your markups, sometimes the markups are fixed, then it becomes a problem. So you have to keep a markup and try to see how you can adjust according to the perceived value that you are trying to offer to the marketplace. Because somewhere down the line, it's a case of judgment, the consumer sentiment in making things happen. And of course, with respect to your competition, how effective are you? How sensitive are you to the competitors in the marketplace and price, and also the looking into the price sensitivity in terms of the marketplace. So what kind of ROIs you want to look into? So these are the few things which you need to look into. Some companies do get into penetration pricing strategy, if as I told you, to achieve their break even, but then the break even can become period becomes larger, or skimming prices where the break even can be achieved faster. But then point is, it cannot be done for every market. It is a situational thing which needs to be looked into in terms of what the company goals are, how big a player are you, what kind of resources you have, what kind of a competition is there, how is your market spread, is the market sensitive towards you, is the market the customers are really actually getting attracted to in terms of your offerings, and how exciting do you sound to them, how compelling you sound to them to your marketing strategy. When you talk about keystone pricing, the markup is almost kept double so that you give more larger space for the you can to play in the marketplace. And selection of the pricing strategy is a critical function for the retailer going forward and sustaining in the marketplace. Otherwise, you will find many players coming and shutting down. Even the moderate players, big companies also, they have shut down the number of stores during the COVID times. We saw major problems with even the established players They were found wanting. They could not uphold the salaries. The large scale attrition rates, and though the demand was there, they could not meet that thing. So they had to get into multiple. Of course, that gave rise to uh, other ways of reaching out to your customer. It also looked into how you can merge both offline and online parameters coming together to give better value add services. Obviously, looking into health propositions. As we talk today, we're talking about COVID coming back. We do not know what's going to. Today, company retailers are more prepared to handle such kind of changes in the, because these are all situational factors. A retailer has to be very much sensitive towards these kind of changes which happen. Now, what could be the various ways in which you can look into the cost base? I have already talked about that it should be either cost based, competition based, or your demand based strategy methods which you can take up. While doing so, you also look into the role of price elasticity and sensitivity. I've talked about price sensitivity, elasticity in how it impacts the pricing objective. Now, what is the role we must understand while talking in terms of the method? If you're talking about let's say cost per method, the price elasticity will very clearly say that the retailer should look into the price elasticity, because until unless if the change of price it is impacting the demand, if it's not impacting the demand, then what kind of strategies they should take, right? So that is something. If my competition is increasing the price, decreasing the price, if it is an inelastic demand, making changes in price does not make any change. So obviously you got to understand that, and wherever you are operating, what kind of sensitivity does it create? You may be, for example, if you find that you in a market which is very elastic, and those products you feel very rigid about your pricing strategy, and you don't change, whereas others have started going for the price reduction, we may find that the demand might shift towards people not getting, which we call the substitution effect. Like people substitute, or what we call as a brand switching kind of a scenario. Customers go to those players who are good. But then it is not going to happen for every kind of product. It is going to happen for those kind of products where we talk about the customer involvement in that product is high or low. In case of a grocery item, the involvement is very low. So you may find this kind of a substitution effect very taking very high. In case of shopping goods like your apparels and footwear, to moderate extent it might get substituted. But when you're looking into a high-end product, which is a specialty product, there you may not find the substitutability so easy, because over there, even if you increase the price or decrease the price, it has got nothing to do with the demand. The demand remains more or less the same. So playing with the price may not be very, very effective in those kind of cases. So it depends upon the kind of product category, the how whether the price elasticity really affects the price sensitivity, so that you can tailor your price changes to optimize your revenue. Again, that's again situational based, product based, market based, and completely customer centric. Until unless you are able to uh, derive that part of the scenario, it's going to be very, very difficult to go ahead. Now, coming to establish a real price strategy, I think you need to go through a series which we have already discussed. How do you evaluate your costs? How do you look into your competition? How you look into your objectives? Based on that, you define your strategy. And before you go for the strategy, you can test your strategy. And at the same time, at times you will also have to get into fine tuning your strategy, because everything does not fit into every market. Every market has its own market dynamics, more competitive, the competition is very different. As a result, as a retailer, one has to be sensitive towards these changes. So you have to give a room of flexibility in your pricing, so that you can even effectively come out of this situation or can adjust to a given situation, thereby making better impact in terms of customer acceptance. So that's what brings us to the end of this, where we had looked into what kind of pricing but the role that pricing plays in retail, I think it is very, very strategic. It looks into the fund. We looked at the pricing fundamentals. What are the factors? How the objectives can be looked into from various aspects, and what are the strategies thereof we can do, and the implementation methods, which requires little bit of tactful handling. That is what we will end up in today's session. Thank you for your patient hearing.